We love Zencaster because it allows us to record the audio for our podcast and create the video segments we use for our weekly Sister Scoop episodes. Zencaster has helped us make content capture simple.
It's now super easy to record a podcast with Zencaster. Log in using your browser and start recording a high-quality podcast right away. Record studio quality sound and up to 4K video with your guests, and feel a sense of zen knowing Zencaster's multi-layered backups ensure you always have your recordings in the highest quality, even if the connection is unstable.
If you've thought about podcasting before and realized that you need a lot of different tools and services, those days are over. With Zencaster's all-in-one podcasting platform, you can create your podcast in one place and distribute it to Spotify, Apple, and other major destinations.
Just go to zencastr.com/pricing and use our code SistersAssembled, and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencaster paid plan. We want you to have the same easy experiences we do for all of our podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story.
Katie and I are always hungry, and one snack we both love is beef jerky. That's why we're so excited to tell you about one of our favorite jerky brands, Matt Hat Jerky.
Matt Hat's delicious taste makes it a great snack, and the variety of flavors, including original, black truffle, and my personal favorite, roasted garlic, means there's a flavor for everyone. Plus, it's local to the area where we grew up in, which we just love.
Use the link in the show notes below to get some Matt Hat Jerky for yourself, and make sure to use our coupon code SistersAssembled for 10% off. Hello and welcome to Sisters Assembled, your home for all things MCU. And this week we are pivoting. We are covering Daredevil Born Again. Season 2 is right around the corner, so it's time to kick things off officially with our predictions for the season, because there was a lot that happened in season 1, and presumably there's going to be even more happening in season 2. I'm going to kick it over to Katie to get us started right away.
Yeah, this is going to be kind of hard because we're not getting a lot.
No, it's the same 5 scenes.
Yeah, and I didn't anticipate that we would, because why would they? I guess, but also, like, there's not a reason to. We know where the season ended last time around, and we know that we're essentially in a military state.
Yep.
These are our facts. We know Mayor Kingpin has put New York essentially in a military state, in which case there are militias running around. You know, don't be a masked person in any capacity, we're learning.
Yeah.
Unless it's the militia, which, you know. And there's just a lot of aspects going on in this that we know this is how it's picking up. We know we have Jessica Jones coming in. We can assume we have Luke Cage coming in. We also know that there's a hunt for Daredevil.
Yes.
That's not shocking. The Masked Crusader himself. There is a lot of stuff that just is confirmed in what we've already seen of what we already knew.
Yeah, and that's where I kind of want to start, is where we will pick up. And I don't know that I've seen anything about the amount of time between the end of season 1 and where season 2 is going to pick things up. I think if I were to take a guess, it's probably been a couple of months.
Yeah.
You know, we're seeing that there are wanted posters for Daredevil, to what you referenced, that Matt Murdock is considered missing. So for that to have happened, it's not like we're picking up, you know, obviously the next day. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how things have continued to devolve further from what we saw in the finale of season 1, because things were pretty crazy already. To your point, you know, the police were definitely, and I shouldn't even say the police, the anti-vigilante task force was really taking the law into their own hands, and they were very much feeding on the power that the kingpin had given them, Mayor Fisk had given them, to basically skirt the law. And so I am both excited and terrified to see how that now has manifested a few months in.
Well, and there's a lot of factors to it too, right? Like, I think we discussed recently, I don't remember exactly in what, but we kind of talked about, like, what does it look like to have this Mayor Kingpin storyline play out?
Yeah.
And how much more? Because we know they're either, I don't remember if they're just filming season 3 or about to kind of film season 3, but we know we're getting our season 3 already. It's been greenlit. We're good to go. So we know we're going that direction eventually. We will have more of this show to come. And it's like, how much plays out in this next season. How much further are we going with it? What are we going to truly see? And the anti-vigilante task force, to what you were kind of saying, is arguably the largest threat.
Yeah.
On top of we totally, because I remember us being like, we did not see that being put together because we were paying attention to everything else. The whole thing with his little like port.
Red Hook. Yeah. And the free port.
Yeah. That's a whole factor that's going to have to play out somewhere in there as well. So it is going to be kind of interesting, as there were a lot of chess pieces moving, I think, in Born Again season 1 versus I think season 2 we're seeing really who wins. And obviously I want to think it's Daredevil, but I'm not so sure it is.
Yeah, it is interesting. We do know that season 3 will not continue the Mayor Fisk storyline.
Right.
The producers have confirmed that they're gonna, move into some different storytelling. I think pulling from some different comics than this line that they've kind of been, setting up and then pulling from for the last, season and then going into this season. So you're right. There does have to be some sort of resolution to this. And we talked in our Mayor Kingpin episode, oh my gosh, like years ago at this point.
So for real.
I was listening to the episode because I was like, I'm not redoing research that past me has done. And I had to scroll so far back in our episodes to find where we had talked about Mayor Kingpin. It's crazy. But I will say, I'll be curious to see kind of how they wrap it up. If they pull from that full storyline with Luke Cage then becoming mayor and then moving into, potentially telling a story focus on him in his own show or things like that. As you pointed out, we have Jessica Jones. So where does she go from here? And I think they're bringing in some new elements this season as well. So I'll be curious how those play into, Fisk's potential downfall at the end of the season. And right now, I was reading articles that were kind of talking about this. There are characters like Matthew Lillard's character, I think his name is Mr. Charles, who's this kind of more international guy who has a lot of power. And he's kind of pushing on Fisk from the top, where Daredevil's pushing on him from the bottom. And that was kind of where the article was analyzing it. And I thought that was super interesting to think about. Kingpin is Daredevil's antagonist, but he's going to have his own antagonist as well in this show. So all of this will then kind of play into how his term as mayor actually ends.
Well, I think that little bit at the end there is the most interesting to me, because we spent a lot of time in season 1 talking about how they're almost both the protagonist.
Yeah.
We were following both sides of their story. We actually, I don't want to say we were ever rooting for Kingpin, because I don't think we really ever were. But you do kind of respect him to a level through the first few episodes, because you really are kind of watching both of them attempt to turn over this new leaf. You're trying to see them both just be good at their jobs, essentially. One as a lawyer, one as the mayor. And you can respect some of the things that Kingpin was putting forward as mayor and the things he was getting done and things of that sort. Obviously that went horribly downhill, but you can respect it. So it is kind of interesting if we kind of look at it from that perspective of how we even viewed the last season, that him kind of having his own antagonist works. It does kind of make sense for him to almost share that screen time with his own foe, especially because when I was kind of talking about winning, let's be real, in season 1, he did win.
Yeah.
And Matt is dealing with the side effects of that, which is wherever season 2 is going to truly pick up. And New York is seeing an unprecedented time because of it. We saw the villain win. And so it is very interesting to see, or to think about, how we're going to see a new antagonist who I'm sure is going to obviously factor into Matt's story, just as much. But to see this antagonist kind of come in and really make an impact now on the fact that Kingpin got what he wanted. He has exactly what he wants.
Yeah.
So it's like, where is that going to play out? And how does Matt fold into that puzzle?
Can I put out a prediction for how this season's going to end?
Well, it's not called the predictions episode for nothing.
All right, I'm gonna put something out there that actually is like firm. This is what I believe is going to happen. We know that Foggy was looking into the Red Hook port. not because he was looking into it because he thought it had anything to do with the Fisks. He was looking into it for a client of his. And that Vanessa hired Bullseye to kill Foggy for that reason, right? So that he would not bring his motion to court and there would be less eyes on the port where they were doing a lot of their illegal activities. We've seen a shot of Foggy in the trailer. I think Foggy is in witness protection and that he is actually going to be able to testify at the end of the season or towards the end of the season and be able to put both of the Fisks away in jail, which would effectively end Mayor Fisk's reign as mayor, his term as mayor. And I think that this works because at the end of the day, Matt has tried multiple times to get to Fisk, right? He did put him in jail. Another time, he nearly killed him. And what we found is that Matt is always trying to fight this inner battle against his inner demon, right? The violent tendencies and those baser instincts that he has. And I think it would be a huge win for Matt not only to remove Fisk and Vanessa from office, but to be able to do so with the rule of law and with his best friend by his side instead of doing so through violent vigilante means. I think those battles that we'll see, the fights he'll have with Jessica, I mean, I think he's going to end up kind of teaming up weirdly with Bullseye, like the enemy of my
Right?
enemy
You
is my
saw that?
friend. Yeah. We know, I mean, we don't know if how much Frank is going to be in this, Frank Castle is going to be in this season because we know he's going to be in Spider-Man, but he is going to have to fight it on the ground violently using violence against the anti-vigilante task force, but I think ultimately the win is going to come from the courts and from Foggy.
I think the win has to come from the court because, and this also goes back to a lot of what we were talking about last season, and quite frankly, the first 3 seasons of this show that happened on Netflix. That is Matt's story consistently.
Yeah.
And now I will say, for any of you who had joined us last year during this, I ripped him apart at one point because I was like, hey, Matt, show some growth.
I remember
we have
this.
yet to get there. Like, we pretend and then we slip right back. And that has been now 4 seasons worth of that. I do think the win has to come from the court. I do agree with it being from Foggy and kind of everything you said there, because obviously there's also like a comic precedence of him faking his own death and everything like that.
Right.
So I do think there is backing for that part as well. But I think he has to be able to prove to himself he can do it legally.
Yeah.
I don't think that if he has this quote unquote win through being a vigilante, I don't think he is ever going to stop fully battling those 2 personas of his. And not that we want him to stop completely, but he's not at peace. Like, let's think about, you kind of brought up Spider-Man and you're thinking about, like, you know, he battles his own things being Spider-Man versus Peter Parker, but he's a lot more at peace with it. Like, he's not like, it's almost an addiction for Matt.
Yeah.
And he does almost have to scratch the itch. And we saw how he was starting to get a little more unstrung the longer he wasn't scratching it. And so I do think in order to kind of bring peace to it, he has to have fulfillment as Matt as well. And I just don't think he's been capable of having that because he's been putting everything into being Daredevil.
Yeah. I also think it was interesting. I was watching a video. It was a interview that Charlie did with a news outlet where he was talking about Matt's like mindset in season 2, and he basically was like, there's a lot of despair there. Like, Matt is really unsure how to move forward. What are the next steps? And Charlie was saying that Karen is actually he's really leaning on Karen, and she's actually calling the shots and Matt's just executing. So he's basically like checked out at this point, other than the fact that he's like, Karen says I need to go here and do this, I will go here and do this. He's like not really making his own decisions, which I think is really, really interesting, that he's almost disassociating from his identity as Daredevil because he's like not making active decisions about what he will do in this fight.
I like that because I think he has to.
Yeah.
Because here's the other thing. He's not just fighting himself as Daredevil versus Matt Murdock. He's also always fighting himself as Daredevil between killing and not killing.
Yeah.
Like, he's having almost an existential crisis in like all aspects of his life. And I wish the best for him because that blows. I can't think that's fun. So I do think he almost has to be able to take that step back and become almost remote about it.
Yeah.
And if Karen's able to do that for him and obviously be there for him as a possible love interest.
Can't believe we're doing this again.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, just trying it again.
Like,
Circles and
whatever.
circles.
Whatever. But that's what the trailers imply. So it's
Yeah.
kind of like it would be very interesting to be there to support him as Matt, but then also to how you kind of said it, to call the shots as Daredevil because he can't think too much about it.
Yeah.
Because that's why he's been miserable for 4 seasons.
Yeah.
When he's thinking too much about it, that's why him and Frank go at it every time they're together. Like, there is just too much going on in that man's head as a character for him to properly be Daredevil without also being Matt, or be Matt without being Daredevil.
Yeah. I mean, y'all, they had this man date a therapist. Like, this is
And
the
he
level
still
of
failed.
like, yes. Well, now said therapist despises him, but the fact that like he is so in his head and he has so much self-doubt that literally their solution was like, let's have this man date a mental health professional. She should have been giving that man therapy every single day. He has, I mean, and she points this out like throughout season 1. Like, you have so much trauma. She's like, and you just like shove it down and shove it down and shove it down. And I really think you talked about Daredevil being an addiction for him. I think that's actually where the urge comes from, right? Like, he has so much that he has been through in his life that he actually feels like the one outlet he has is being Daredevil. And yet he has this other side of him that feels so guilty about doing that. And so it's just it almost causes him then more anxiety. So it's like it's fixed. It's like having OCD, right? Like, you have the obsession and then you do the compulsion and then it just reinforces and it's like this cycle. That's basically Matt with the Daredevil persona that he has. And it is a struggle for him. And I'm hoping that him approaching it in a different way where maybe he's not as in control or not as in his head will actually maybe help him develop stronger boundaries. Like you talked about Spider-Man. I think even though Peter and Spider-Man, Peter struggles with the Peter and the Spider-Man of it all, he has better boundaries than Matt. So it's easier for him to live in both of these identities. And Matt just does not have that concept at all.
Well, not that I'm trying to like bash on Matt, but like Peter's also been doing it since he was like 15.
Yeah.
He's been capable of kind of keeping these 2 lives. And now, when I say these 2 lives separate, I'm not going to sit here and pretend we don't see those crossovers where friends of his, family, I mean, we just lost, and we're referring to obviously strictly Tom Holland Spider-Man in universe at this point.
Yeah.
But we just watched him lose his Aunt May. We obviously just lost, like literally lose her, like she passed away. But then he lost his entire life and everything else. I'm not going to sit there and say there's not obviously those aspects, but when he is kind of doing his typical day to day where there isn't a multiversal factor and other things that are kind of messing with his Spider-Man versus Peter Parker life, he's juggling both. But as you kind of said, it's for him, it's easier because it's like a duty to him to do it because that's his big thing, right? That's what Uncle Ben, obviously in this universe, it wasn't Uncle Ben, but that's Spider-Man's like big point of, with great power becomes great responsibility. That's why they have it.
Yeah.
That's the point.
Yeah.
That's why that's his driver. For Matt, his driver is a release.
Yeah.
And while he wants to do the right thing, and his whole thing sometimes is when he says it out loud, it's, well, the law always doesn't get it done.
Yeah.
Or it doesn't get it done fast enough, or it doesn't actually punish the people who deserve to be punished and all this stuff, which is understandable. And this is, I think, an argument Foggy has a lot with him as well. He is using it as a means to be violent for the sake of himself as well. There is a selfish aspect to why Matt is doing what he does as Daredevil. And I
He
think
enjoys
that's why
it.
he does enjoy it. And I think that's why he gets in those arguments with Frank. And I also think that's why he gets in the opposite arguments with Karen and Foggy.
Yeah.
Because there are so many aspects of this character that's so interesting. And that's why, again, though, to circle it all back, like I'm hoping this season he actually experiences growth for once. Like I
Tell us how you
I
really feel.
I do. I love Matt. I do. But after watching 4 seasons now, I'm like, buddy, you gotta try something else. Like, this is not working.
He does just keep slamming his head into a wall and wondering why the wall won't break. And it's
Right.
like, use a tool of some sort.
Right. Like, I love Matt. I love Daredevil. And I don't think there's a way to ever separate them. I think that's what season 1 tried to show. There
Yeah.
isn't a way to not have them the same way there isn't a way to not have Fisk being Kingpin. There
Right.
isn't a way to have them be separate. And I don't disagree with that, but I do think if I had a wish for season 2, I am manifesting that he is able to experience growth as a character, that he can and if it comes down to Karen kind of calling more of those shots, being a little bit more in control for now, almost being like his guy in the chair, if you will,
Yeah.
to allow him to, okay, now's when Daredevil steps in, now's when Daredevil isn't. And you just need to be Matt Murdock and you need to handle this from a legal perspective. Because quite frankly, I'd like to see that too.
Well, it takes the decision away out of his hands.
Well, right. It completely takes away that impulse.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, you could still scratch the itch, but under certain circumstances, here's 5 minutes, go scratch it. Now you're done.
Yeah. You've met the criteria, and it's like, it's almost, because I feel like we're just psychoanalyzing Matt so hard here, but I feel like for him it's like he gives himself permission to do the Daredevil stuff, but if someone else gives him permission, then it's not, the onus isn't on him anymore.
Right.
And I think that can be like a good way for him to kind of like displace the guilt that he feels about what he's doing.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think that would be a very interesting take for season 2/season 5. And it would actually start to allow him to grow. Because again, love him, but like, wow, we need to see some character growth, Matt. We need to be
Stubborn
able
man.
to move forward. Yes. So I do think that's going to be very interesting. And you know what, though? I think the circumstances of what we're walking into season 2 allows for that.
Yeah.
We are in unprecedented times. I said it earlier. This has been nothing we've seen in Daredevil or Daredevil Born Again before. This is unheard of. And so I do think that maybe because we're reaching that point of being, well, I should say we are literally reaching the point because we're about to watch it, but like they are currently in a military state, we can actually kind of see him react differently. And again, he lost.
Yeah.
Now, that's not to say he didn't lose before. Obviously, like we've seen people die, we've seen all sorts of stuff. Like it's happened, but not like this. And I think circumstantially, when it doesn't just come down to just your average mass crusader being the ones who are being taken out, but it comes down to everybody who's wearing a mask. Don't wear a mask. Don't do this. Don't do that. There are strict, they have curfews, all these things that are going into effect and that are now in effect that completely change the landscape of New York City. I'm hoping is enough to completely change the inner landscape of Matt Murdock and who Daredevil is and how he moves forward from here on out.
Wow, that was extremely well said. I just have to
Oh
give
my
you
God,
kudos
thank
there.
you.
You were like saying that, and I was like, wow, she's really landing this plane exceptionally well. So I just want to give you some
Wow.
flowers.
Thank you. I really locked in. I don't
You
know what
did.
happened.
I was like, wow, where did my sister go? And the English professor just walked in.
Every once in a while, my brain isn't fried by the time we're trying to record, and it really just brings out some great things.
Proud of you. Proud of you.
Thank you.
But no, I totally agree. I think you said it extremely well. I do want to pivot from kind of, we've been talking about Matt, we've been talking about kind of the end of the series or the end of the episode, not the end of the series. No, end of the season, y'all. Every word but the one I was trying to pick. One of us came here with a fully functioning brain, and guess it wasn't me.
Hey.
So, anyway, we have talked about those things, but what I now want to talk about is kind of those middle episodes, right? What are the things that are going to essentially get us from point A to point B that aren't focused on Matt? And I think one of the big things that a lot of people have been talking about, especially since Kristen Ritter was announced to come back, is what are the cameos that there are going to be in this show? Essentially, too, going off of that, what is the team that Matt is putting together? We saw him with a bunch of officers from the police force at the end of season 1. We know Jessica Jones is going to be part of it, potentially Bullseye. But Katie, I would love to hear from you kind of who do you think is going to show up and who do you think is going to be a part of Matt's anti vigilante task force team?
So I kind of already said I assume we're going to see Luke Cage.
I agree.
I don't really think that's surprising. It'd be a crazy thing to pull out an Iron Fist right now.
I would just because I want the Defenders to be put back together, I would love this.
I think it also makes the most sense.
Yeah.
This is the place to do it. This is the landscape. I think something we talked a lot about in the finale episodes, and I think we did do multiple episodes. I think we talked a lot about this is wide scale.
Yeah.
Like, we're not at a point here where this can be ignored in other things. I actually think that's partially why it got brought up slightly in the Thunderbolts discussion too, because we were trying to figure out the timeline because they were obviously in New York.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be shocked to see Iron Fist. I know you mentioned the Punisher. I think he has to be in it a little.
Yeah.
We saw him kind of have a big moment in season 1. We do know his special presentation is on the table. So I think he has to show up.
Yeah.
The hardest thing is, and I know it's because of Sony, but I would have loved to have seen Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Not because I want it to be the Spider-Man show, but because I, again, don't think you can ignore some of this.
Right.
And I struggle a lot because, and I don't want to get on the soapbox here, guys, but I do struggle because we have a lot of these conversations especially in New York.
Yeah.
Where we're like, oh, do you just decide that when it hits block like 108, you decide not to, like, you don't cross that. That's blah, blah, blah's area, or it's Hell's Kitchen. No, that's Daredevil. We don't go in there.
We don't work on Bleecker Street because that's where Doctor Strange is.
Exactly. Well, exactly. And so, like, that's where I struggle a little bit because from that capacity, I understand it's boots on the ground kind of storytelling here, that we're not trying to deal with magic or anything else, but we do have Doctor Strange in New York. We have the Thunderbolts in the Avengers Tower.
Yep.
We have a lot of heroes chilling in New York or right across the river. So it is a little hard, I think, because we don't understand timing, and also because sometimes these shows happen in their own version of silos.
Yeah.
And then we also have the Spider-Man movie coming this summer, and we know the Punisher's in that. So I just think there are just like a lot of factors cameo-wise. Obviously, the ones that I actually think are going to happen are the rest of the Defenders and Frank. I really am not sure they're going to pull anybody else, but I do wish that we had the capability to at least see Spider-Man, because this affects him.
Yeah, it's there's so many layers to the Spider-Man conversation. I do want to point out, we know that there's yet another time jump before Spider-Man Brand New Day. So what year did we put that in? That would have been...
Well, it's 4 years past No Way Home.
No Way Home. And No Way Home was right after Far From Home. And Far From Home was a year after The Blip. So that's 2028. Look at me, math.
Good for you.
So we're sitting in 2028. Part of the reason, actually, that I think that they did that time jump with Spider-Man is to avoid having to talk about this, right? Because having that take place after all of this has wrapped up with Fisk means that he does not need to be involved.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean we couldn't see a cameo at some point of earlier Peter Parker to bridge the gap between No Way Home and Brave New World. Brand New Day. Brave New World is Captain America. But anyway, I too don't think that we're going to see him, though I wish we would. I know we got a hint or like a little baby call out Easter egg to him in season 1. Even just like a wanted poster would be cool. Like, oh, Spider-Man is wanted. Like, just something to acknowledge that he's there. Because I guess Matt Murdock doesn't even know that he knew him anymore because of everything that happened in the end of No Way Home. Because these are two characters who also had connections to one another at one time, but those have been severed because of the spell. Anyway, I think that Spider-Man's involvement is going to be very limited, But there is one other character that we haven't talked about yet that I do think is going to be a part of Matt's squad, though she is significantly younger than everyone else, and that is Angela as White Tiger. She is going to take
Ah,
over
I forgot
her
about her.
uncle's. Yeah, she's going to take over her uncle's mantle. Some Eagle Eye fans have actually said that there is a section or a small shot in one of the trailers where you can actually see her in the White Tiger suit, which is pretty cool. I mean, the girl's still in high school, so maybe going to be a little bit limited in terms of how much they use her because she is probably so untested in the field. And a lot of these are super powered or extremely skilled fighters. However, I don't think that anybody's going to be able to tell Angela no because, as we've seen, you tell her no and she goes to find Muse on her own. But that's another character that I do think is going to be, whether she's on the team or doing it on her own and Matt has to take her under his wing, she's going to be out there fighting Fisk tooth and nail.
That's funny. I forgot about her because I forgot the White Tiger storyline happened.
It's a sad one.
It is, but also politely, season 1 was so jarring.
Yeah, very disjointed.
Yeah, that entire storyline honestly was just forgotten by me. I will not lie to y'all. I think that would be a very interesting one to pop up. I think it'd be kind of cool to see a couple, just when I say random, I just mean ones that are not inherently as prominent as we would think.
Oh, swordsman.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like people who maybe aren't quite as prominent, but like, because obviously we saw him, he came back in season 1. So I think, and we know what side he's on. So I think
Yes.
it would be kind of cool to be able to kind of see some of these people come together. It's the perfect ode to those characters too, because I'm not expecting to see White Tiger have her own show.
Oh, I don't know. That's one I could see actually. Swordsman, no. Swordsman, no. But I could see as she grows up, I could see her getting her own property moving forward.
I'm gonna say probably not.
We'll leave that one file open.
Not because I'm not, there's just so many factors. And unfortunately, just from some of the landscape of the things we've learned through the last saga, I just don't see that going well. I also think you already have your Jessica Jones coming back. Plus, in the long run, as we move into different sagas moving forward, I'm just not sure how prevalent a character like that could be.
Give her a special presentation.
Maybe. But I just mean in the long run, either way, like I don't know if these characters necessarily need the time of day to have their own thing, right? But they'd be interesting characters that they've brought onto the table, whether it's in this project or in other projects, that's like, hey, yeah, they're here too.
Yeah.
And that is something I think we did learn, and they made sure to go out of their way to teach us last season, is that there are other masked crusaders out there.
Yeah.
There are other people playing hero. And it's not just Daredevil, and it's not just Spider-Man or Luke Cage or Jessica Jones. Like, we have these people who are out there being heroes throughout New York, and I'm sure in other places as well, but New York is, where we currently are set. And so I do think, this is the time to kind of bring them in and have them have their moment. Let them be a part of this. And it would be interesting because and we talked a lot about just Matt as a character as well, but I think giving him back not only his Defenders team, but maybe a little, like some guest stars, if you will, I think is something that could be really good for him, because I think there's also so much weight on him because he always feels like he's doing it alone.
Yeah, and I do think, we talked a lot about the guilt that he feels for being Daredevil and things like that, but when he's working in a team, I would have to think that it helps kind of justify being Daredevil a little bit more, right? Like he's able to say, I mean, yeah, like I maybe enjoy this, but also I'm fighting with all these people and we're fighting something real and we are, trying to make a difference. So I would have to think that that kind of eases some of his mental burden as well, to know that he's, actively working towards a goal with other people and other people that he trusts are doing the right thing.
Yeah, that's what I mean. And I think it's going to be interesting to see the little team up happen. And I'm excited. I want to see it happen early on because I want to see it play out.
Yeah.
I hope it isn't something we wait too long for. I also just think in general, season 2 should be relatively much more cohesive than season 1. Fingers crossed. So I'm hoping in doing so, we can kind of show more of this team up story and what it's going to look like because again, this is affecting everybody and it's also affecting everyday citizens.
Yeah.
They're not okay with this either.
Yeah, it'll be super interesting. I know we will discuss a lot of the political metaphors that are being made as we've seen the season and as the episodes are airing, because it'll be easier obviously to look at them or to speak about them after seeing kind of the avenue that they go from a storytelling perspective. But I will say, I rewatched season 1 in preparation for this episode and to go into season 2, so it was all fresh because I can't remember what I ate for breakfast, so can't remember what I watched last year. But that being said, I was very much struck by the whole formation of the anti-vigilante task force, something that we talked about last year. But last year, when we were watching the show, a lot of the things that are happening in America in the year of 2025 into 26 weren't even happening yet. So it's going to be even more on the nose from not just a kingpin as a leader perspective, but also this personal force that he's got to enforce his own personal missions outside of the rule of law, even though he's saying it's the rule of law, is going to be much more on the nose in 2026 than it even was in 2025. So that's definitely something that I'm extremely excited to dive into, how much they lean into that, knowing what we kind of where we are as a country in the United States and how much they are fully recognizing the parallels.
Life imitates art and art imitates life.
Yeah.
Yeah, I arguably have to think this is one of the best or like the most prominent reasons I love Daredevil.
Yeah.
Because as a character, like I think Daredevil's cool. Don't get me wrong. Am I ever gonna list him in my top 5? Personally, no. Right? Like we know who my people are. I mean, he fits the criteria. Let's not be wrong. Like the morally gray kind of characters, like he fits in it. But trauma, all those things.
Self-sabotage.
Self-sabotage, kind of play a little bit into that, like could be a little bit of a villain depending on your perspective, whatever. But I do think what makes me love Daredevil as a show is the way that it depicts real life situations.
Yeah.
And it does create conversation around them.
Yeah.
And I think, as you kind of just said it, we're really going to move into something that parallels a lot more of our current day to day. And I do think there's going to be a lot of discourse about it in the show itself.
Yeah.
That I think there's going to be very on the nose conversations and dialogue being said between many of the characters and how they go about kind of fighting back and things of that nature. And it's going to be a very open dialogue, between us too, because again, like it is very on the nose at this point. Like we are living a lot of what the show is depicting in different ways, but we're living through a lot of it. And so I am very excited to have these conversations because I do think, sometimes it's the best way is to talk about it through a show.
Yeah. It can be a helpful vehicle for having extremely difficult conversations. So that's definitely something that I'm extremely looking forward to throughout the season. But I feel like, from my perspective, and Katie, feel free to chime in here, I feel like I've covered a lot of the topics that I wanted to talk about for season 2. The only thing that is outstanding is I'm curious if you think that there are going to be other villains or other kind of, we'll call them side quests, that Matt might be going on, so that it's not quite so linear a path to Kingpin through the entire series or season. I'm thinking, I know we talked about the disjointedness of season 1, but I'm thinking kind of about Muse and how he played into what was happening with Kingpin and was almost a symptom, or what happened to him was kind of a symptom of what was going on in the larger narrative, but yet he was very much someone that Daredevil had to go against. So I'm curious if you think that that will be, I know we have Matthew Lillard's character as well, but other than that, will there be kind of these other villains that will make appearances as we go through the season?
My gut actually says no. And it's primarily because this is their big one right now.
Yeah.
With the fact that Kingpin was successful. So I feel like when you kind of put that into perspective and think about how crazy everything is right now, because again, like good or bad, everybody's being targeted. He's ruling that city. So I do kind of feel like also from a narrative perspective, other villains are like small fish. Like they're really not something I think that needs to stray the focus from the fact that we have the anti-vigilante task force out there wreaking havoc, which they are, and doing the dirty work of Kingpin. And now if Kingpin's feeling pressure from a different direction, what does that look like when two, pretty powerful individuals are going at it on a large scale? Especially when they're pretty powerful individuals on the wrong side.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of just nuances between the actual circumstance, the players already involved, how to topple the big guy, that at the end of the day, adding in other kind of, as you put it, side quests in there of other villains that maybe last 2 episodes or whatever. Because let's also not forget, Muse was entirely wasted.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So without doing that again, and it's only what, 9 episodes again. Like we're not
I think it's
watching
8, actually.
well, there you go. We're not watching a 24 episode season or something
Right.
like that, in which case that would make more sense. We're not talking Agents of Shield here. Like we're talking Daredevil, shorter seasons. That's what they do. Because that's what they always did regardless. It was always 13 episodes. I just don't think there's room for it, because I do think in order to tell this large story, you have to be focused on said large story the whole time, because I don't think the path is linear, even if it is only going towards Kingpin.
I think that's fair. There is a part of me that like hopes that we would see some maybe smaller villains at some point through the season, but then I also have to remind myself like there are going to be future seasons, right? Like there are going to be other storylines that we're going to tell with Daredevil that are not going to be necessarily Kingpin focused, or at the very least he's not going to be at the apex of his power. So I can get behind what you're saying and then just think about, in the future, how are we going to maybe add some different villains and some different antagonists for Matt? But right now, I think you're right. I think let's focus on the man in Gracie Mansion who has all of New York under martial law.
Yeah, exactly.
Alrighty. Well, I think that's it for our predictions for season 2 of Daredevil Born Again. In case you hadn't noticed, we're extremely, extremely excited to watch the season as it unfolds, and we'll be with you every step of the way. You can follow on your podcast platform of choice to make sure that you're staying up with us as we release reactions to each episode. And you can also check out our website and our Buy Me a Coffee, both of which are linked in the show notes below.
You guys can also give us a follow on all of our socials, also in the show notes down below. And we will be back next week as we cover Daredevil episode 1 for the second season of Born Again. So make sure you guys are joining us as we do cover that. Some fun news is, as we cover Daredevil, we will be doing video episodes. So make sure if you want to watch us, you can. You might wanna. That'd be cool. It's whatever. So, go ahead and watch us on YouTube if you want. The episodes will be coming out on Fridays rather than Sundays. Obviously, the show will be coming out at 9 o'clock on Tuesdays. We will try our best to get that all turned around, but we want you guys to be able to get that content as soon as we can. So keep an eye out on Friday. Go ahead, watch us on YouTube, or still listen to us on your podcast platform of choice. But we're excited about Daredevil Born Again Season 2. We hope you guys are too. And as always, Marvel just blew your mind, so let's talk about it.